Anyways, it's my pleasure to introduce you our moderator for Panel 1, Clara Dominguez, Director of Latin America Division at Voice of America. As director, Clara oversees broadcasts to Haiti and the Spanish-speaking countries of the Americas over radio, television, and the internet. Clara will introduce her panel today, guide the conversation, and moderate the Q&A. Thank you so much, Clara.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you, everybody. This is a great opportunity. I'm very excited to be here, and I've done a lot of reading on the topic of e-diplomacy for this panel, and I wanted to select a quote that sort of put this whole thing together. And after reading a lot, I picked up something from Alec Ross, the Senior Advisor for Innovation for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and he said, "The 21st century is a terrible time to be a control freak." So I thought this would just really encompass what we're kind of talking about here. So we have the opportunity to talk to embassy practitioners about, what is their strategy? I mean, what is the impact of all of this, and what are they trying to accomplish? So I'm honored to be with Haitham Moussaoui. He's the digital diplomacy editor at the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates, and Sana Kangasharhu, who's the press counselor at the Embassy of Finland, and Jet Shine, digital director at the Embassy of Israel. Thank you very much. And the first question I have is there a strategy for social media? Is it an embassy strategy? Is it a ministry strategy? How did you plan this whole thing out?
Well, I think for us, particularly, and of course I can't really talk for other embassies or anything like that, but I've talked to several different embassies, and it seems like everybody kind of has their own ways. For us, it began about 3.5 years ago when we realized we were fortunate enough to have leadership that was very forward thinking enough to realize this is something that we need to do. We have to do it. So when we started out, to be honest with you, there was no plan, really. But the plan was the overall plan of what the embassy's mandate is to reach out. Is sort of an extension of what the United Arab Emirates does. The United Arab Emirates is, more so wants to engage with the global community more and more. So for us, it's sort of an extension of that, to sort of send that message here. And we realized the best way to sort of do that, to engage with our audience here, is to go where the audience is. And obviously more and more so, the audience is online. And so we realized that this is the way we need to sort of engage with them. We've had a lot of interest with that. More so than we realized that we would have. And then, so because of that, we had to think of different ways to sort of engage, not just to sort of broadcast information out there, but more to use it in a strategic way. So to answer your question really is our strategy really is an embassy-wide, where the different departments have different tasks, and to sort of reach out and to different parts of the United States, or what they do in particular. So our strategy is to support them, is to give them the support that they need to back them up with that. So we preface any meetings they're going to have, or any trips they're going to have, with information, put information out there. If it's about trade or anything like that, we put that information out there. When they're on their trip or anything like that, we put information about that particular area where they're at, what kind of trade do we do with them, and things like that. And then when we come back, obviously we put information, about the trip, and on and on. But And anyway, I don't want to take up too much.
Okay, Sanna, in the case of the Embassy of Finland or Finland, do you have a particular strategy, or do you focus on a particular segment of people or ideas, or?
Definitely. I'd actually say that we have sort of 3 levels of strategies that all have to be in line, starting from a very, very pragmatic level where every embassy is very independent on, for example, taking new social media tools into use. But if you take one into use, you have to do a strategy for that. It's a kind of a more of a form that is sent from the headquarters that we have to fill in with what are your target groups, what do you want to do with this new tool, and so on, how often are you going to post things there, and so on. And all of that must be based then on a larger kind of a public diplomacy strategy that is country specific. For example, we have a United States public diplomacy strategy, which is then a broader thing with more sort of theory in there and sort of more thinking. It's not just a form you fill in, it's more of a memo. And then maybe on top of all of this is something that's more of a new thing for us. We call it the Team Finland strategy. That was something that came out last year. And that's a kind of a whole new way of thinking that we have in Finland. It's also probably mirroring a change in diplomacy, sort of more of the traditional political diplomacy, more into what we'd call the commercial diplomacy. We are now focusing more and more on business, on investments, and that is quite heavy on our social media strategies at the moment.
Are there any tools, Jet, that you use, any particular tools or any particular social media tools that you use for your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of echoing what Haitham and Sanna both said, we want to go where the people are, and whether that's on Facebook or Twitter or any of the other kind of mediums that are out there, YouTube, Pinterest, any of the kind of unique platforms, it's finding a way to be on there, but also thinking very thoroughly about it. It's our foreign ministry certainly has the directives of some of the foreign policy that we might be going out with, or the public diplomacy initiatives that we're going forth with, but it makes sense in China to be on Weibo. It doesn't make sense in the United States to be on Weibo. So we're picking and choosing and trying to be very selective, as Sanna kind of outlined in maybe our own unique way of where are the people now, and how can we find a way to reach them in unique and creative ways. Kind of Facebook and Twitter, a lot of people are on that, and no doubt you can't kind of ignore those platforms, but certainly looking at the other platforms that are out there as well.
But in your case, Pinterest is one of the platforms that you use to do your outreach.
Correct. I mean, people, when they often think of Israel, they're thinking of what they're reading in the paper, and we're trying to broaden the narrative beyond some of the front page stories that you might be reading. So Pinterest provides us a unique opportunity to kind of reach the audiences. Certainly there's a specific demographic that's on Pinterest and things that they're looking for, and we try to reach them with unique pictures of culture and commercial that represent Israel.
Mm-hmm. How do you know that you have an impact? I mean, how do you know that people, that you are reaching out to people and whatever you're communicating to them actually has an impact? How do you capture people?
Yeah, I think that's a sort of a question that we really that we all have really, and that we're all trying to do to make sure that we do reach out and we are targeting and we capture those ones. And I think that's an ongoing challenge. But I think for us, for just one thing that we do every year or sometimes every other year. What we'll do is we'll do a focus group. So recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, or two years, we've added the question of, if while we're asking them, do you know what the United Arab Emirates is? Do you know how much trade they do? And then when they answer them, we'll always ask them also, like, well, where did you get that information from? We started to see more and more of a trend where people will say, I got that information from the embassy's Facebook page or the embassy's site. So just for as far as that specific audience goes, which is the general audience, the general American audience, we have started to see a trend that our online media is making an impact. Yeah.
San, how do you measure impact in it, or if you can tell us a project or a specific project, and how were you able to measure the success of that particular initiative?
I don't really have a straight answer for that, because we don't do a lot of social media campaigns in that sense, where very much in a kind of a day-to-day flow and so on. Because on foreign policy issues, for example, we follow very much. We're a member of the European Union, so we have the common foreign security policy and so on, and much of the same material that we are communicating is communicated by all the other 27 members of the European Union and the European Union institutions as such. So we don't do that sort of measuring. I think all of us communicators are struggling with the same thing of measuring. We all know the short-term measures, like you just have the numbers of likes or followers, or how shared are your posts and so on. But I think then on the larger issues, they're so long-term, it's difficult to measure what was exactly the impact of your social media work. Let's say like now, all the European Union countries are doing a lot of social media work on the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the TTIP, working very hard on that. And in the end, I guess the sort of the great measurement is, does it pass in the Congress or not in the end, but how do we then measure what was the impact of our social media?
I guess what I'm trying to get is it's a challenge to really capture people's attention. And when you have social media, you are competing with thousands of people out there. So what do you guys do to just grab people's attention and focus them on what you're trying to, the message that you're trying to deliver?
Yeah, I think it's part of our public diplomacy mission of the embassy in Washington, is to reach the people that are throughout the American public. So we're constantly reading the papers, looking kind of what the trends are happening online, and seeing what people are talking about, and seeing how they may be influenced by whether it's the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. Certainly on the foreign policy issues is a lot of the stuff that we're looking at. Had a couple examples over the last year. One that was very successful, one that wasn't as much, is back during the United Nations General Assembly. We had the president of Iran, who was being perceived as a very moderate leader in the case, and he was about to give his first speech to the United Nations. And we were seeing in a lot of the papers, in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, where a lot of the people kind of following the foreign policy discussion, is he was the moderate. He was on kind of what we called a charm offensive. Did an interview with Ann Curry on NBC and MSNBC. And we were trying to find a way to kind of shift the dial and remind people about who his past was. We created a fake LinkedIn page, is looking at, right, when people are looking on LinkedIn, they're looking to see about people's past and what they can learn about them. So we created a fake LinkedIn page and tweeted that out, and it kind of shifted the whole discussion. Is a day or two before he was about to go speak, no longer were people just discussing about how moderate he was, but they were discussing kind of his past and what his nuclear background was, how he was part of the negotiating process kind of for many years prior. And we saw that as a success, right? We were reading the papers beforehand when we did this campaign. Certainly we got a lot of retweets, we got a lot of impressions, it made a number of media outlets, but we saw certainly a shift in the news outlets as well, and a little bit of their discussion. No longer was it maybe in paragraph 7 or 8, but it was moving up closer to the top in paragraphs 2 or 3. On kind of a cultural effort is always following, right? Part of digital diplomacy is the opportunity to not only send everything out, but to engage with a lot of people and listen and follow. And Natalie Portman's husband, Benjamin Millepied, was traveling in Tel Aviv and taking pictures and tweeting with the hashtag Tel Aviv or Israel. And that's something that we're following very closely. And we started engaging back and forth with him on Twitter and got permission to kind of post his pictures on Facebook. So here we had Natalie Portman's husband, who was the choreographer in Black Swan and a very noteworthy dance choreographer. And here, the embassy in Washington of Israel, he's back in Tel Aviv, and we're communicating with him and kind of creating that discussion, and now posting these pictures on Facebook to kind of broaden the discussion on kind of what's happening. Unfortunately, they didn't go viral. It didn't go very far, just a few tens of likes for each of them, but it shows kind of the opportunity where we can go and the types of people that we can reach online.
Social media is personal and is personable, and it's not structure and it's not hierarchical. And when people sometimes think of the government, or a government, they think of, hierarchy, and they think of a certain vocabulary, they think of a certain structure. So how do you manage, on the one hand, the hierarchy, the structure, the message, with that world of people that are just being very personable, very open, very fast, very engaging, and how do you manage that?
I mean, so for us, really, so it's not. I mean, I think that's the tone that we want to sort of take. We want to sort of not be as open as we can, as being as welcoming as we can. Even the way we even the tone, really, of our tweets and everything like that. We sort of wanted to, I think, in the beginning, not that we set out to specifically make it that way, but it just sort of evolved in that way, and it's worked with us. I mean, are you asking, like, sort of how do we manage that, or I mean?
Well, I mean, there is a, when you talk about Twitter or social media,
Okay.
People are just open and they're spontaneous. Perception of governments is that, open, spontaneous, fast, free, timely, may not necessarily be the same as the people in social media. And individuals in that world are at the same level as the government. There is no hierarchy. You can be a person and be very influential. You don't have to be a government to be very influential. So how does a government or a foreign policy mission or an embassy, live in that environment?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said earlier, I think that's sort of, at first when we started out, we sort of didn't know where we wanted to be, because they're not sort of, an embassy is not really sort of used to talking in that way or sort of engaging in that way. But we learned that we need to, and that's not been an issue with us at all, really, because we found that just by listening to others that are engaging with us, this is how they prefer us. This is how they prefer their information. So we sort of go with the flow, if you will. If this is the type of information they need, we hand them that information. If this is the way they want that information, sure.
You have to adapt. You have to be responsive, and it may be kind of counterintuitive to where government was maybe a few years ago, but I think nowadays you're seeing people being much more reactive. As an embassy, we're open and willing to kind of be immediately responsive on things that might be sensitive. Of course, you're going to take your time, but you have to kind of put the faith in the people who are managing the accounts to want to be responsive and to kind of be very quick and reactive. If you're even 5-10 minutes late on a conversation, you're completely missing the conversation, and it can shift to a whole nother object or a whole nother subject. So, right, when you're following and listening and engaging to people, you have to be there with them and be willing to kind of react and engage. And there's certainly a change of culture, and we were discussing this last night at our dinner, is you have to have the change of culture from kind of all different elements and the willingness to want to be responsive and need to be responsive.
So, do you want to?
Yeah, I think for us it has been quite natural. Finland is a very low hierarchy country. It's very easy to reach practically anybody in the government from any different levels, and that has always been in our system of administration. So working on the social media, it's a kind of a natural flow for us. I think actually a lot of us who are posting our social media sites, we do it a lot in the same way we'd be doing our personal social media sites and so on, sort of having the same kind of language, often even the same kind of post and so on. As I said, we're concentrating more maybe on the sort of the country branding, soft power things. So we use a lot of humor there, and those seem to often be the things that work the best. I think sort of a thinking behind what we're doing also is often that we try to post things that people would like to share. because that's then the best way of course, going viral, finding larger audiences, getting more people to follow your sites and so on. And often humor, for example, is the thing that works the best, or really great pictures and so on. And we are allowed to be very creative, very independent on that, which I really appreciate also.
So people can tweet freely, kind of.
Kind of, yeah, very much. I wish
Up to a
more.
point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I wish more people were tweeting. I think exactly this sort of shift we were talking about earlier is happening. That coming from the traditional diplomacy and the traditional career diplomats have to start thinking of new ways of doing their job. They have to go on Twitter, and it's inevitable that they have to take the social media better into account.
And I think,
yeah.
I'll kind of go on top of that is getting the individual diplomats on board as well, beyond just the embassies. I think you'll see the individual diplomats who are subject matter experts in various fields, whether it's in agriculture, in the economy, or trade, or commercial, that they're the ones that can kind of sometimes best respond in that vertical to kind of that conversation. The embassy may not be an expert on everything. They're kind of the jack of all trades, having a discussion with a lot of different people on a lot of different subjects, but sometimes you need kind of those individual subject matter experts to be in on that conversation. And I think that's what you're seeing a lot of different ministries around the world and embassies as well, is trying to encourage the diplomats themselves to be in the conversation, not just kind of, a lot of them I think are listening. They have maybe a count and they just kind of be quiet, but how can they be active and engaging and maybe correcting something that could be wrong, or adding an additional point of importance onto an existing conversation that's happening.
But has it been difficult or not to create that culture where diplomats share and are on social media and see that as part of their job? Has that been difficult or not?
To be honest with you, yes. It has for us. I mean, not that for them to see that it's important, but for them to sort of participate in it. A lot of people are just they're sort of, they don't want to mix the two. They may have their own Facebook or Twitter accounts, their own personal, but they don't want to sort of mix the two. They feel there's a kind of thing, but so it has been a little bit hard. It has been a little bit hard to sort of put them at ease a little bit, and to show them that it's actually beneficial to them. It actually makes their job a little bit easier. So when I'm able to do that, and it's taken a bit, but I think now, I get a lot of emails, or I get a lot of calls, or I get a lot of texts from wherever they are to say, hey, I'm here. This would be really great to put online. So you're seeing a trend that they are understanding that this is an important thing that they need to be a part of.
Dana, has it been a challenge?
Yeah, I'd say sort of getting our ambassadors on board is not that difficult in a way, because they have this sort of feeling of responsibility that, okay, this is something they have to start doing. Our ministers are quite active in tweeting, and they are putting a bit of pressure on the ambassadors also. But then the next level, that's more difficult. It's people often say, and I understand that also, that they already have so much work to do that they don't have the time to hang around in the Twitter to follow what's going on there, or especially then not to tweet. And so I think there's a little bit of a barrier, kind of a mental barrier we still need to break. But I think that comes with as the generations of diplomats change, more and more young people coming in, they already have had their Twitter accounts for 5 years. When they come into the diplomatic service, it's a natural way of life for them. They don't think anymore of it as like this big fearful threshold that they would have to cross to change their ways of doing work.
Do people in any way fear, well, a diplomat is always a diplomat, no matter what time it is, you're representing your country. You're never a private person when you have a job of diplomat. Is that might be one of the reasons why people may not really be involved, or not want to be involved, or?
Potentially, but I think that's for the same reason that they might be hesitant to be involved is the same reason why they should be involved, or they are interested, is because that's part of their job. Their job is to communicate with the public on whatever these respective subjects or conversations are. So anytime, right, they need to go where the people are, that goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier, is trying to get them involved in that. And it's certainly there's the generation gap and trying to kind of close that and get as many people kind of active in having the conversation as well. But there are those hesitations, but they're kind of like you're forcing them to kind of overcome them and recognizing the benefits. Is we always start when we're getting a diplomat on board, is always start with just having them follow, right? We'll do the research for them and follow 10 to 20 accounts that are interested. The people that they're meeting with on a day or on a weekly basis, now they can follow them on a day-to-day basis, see what else they're dealing with, and kind of understand the broader perspective and the broader conversation that they're having, and they can maybe better tailor their conversation to them when they meet with them in person.
Social media is not just pushing out information to individuals or engaging. There's also a listening component to that. Do you listen, or do you gather information from that social media?
No, definitely. That's a huge part of it. Huge part of it. You know, there's a sort of I created this sort of wheel, or I keep this wheel in my head all the time of every post that I make. It's about what I want to talk about, who I want to target, and it always ends with and then after I'm done, listen. You know what the reaction is, because I need to know. I need to know for several different reasons. Did that post work? Was that information what the public or my target audience wanted to know? Is it useful? And then also beyond that, I listen by reading tweets or direct tweets or retweets or things like that are directed to us about information both that people need, and then also there is those tweets or posts and stuff or comments that can be very negative. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those are based on just wrong information. But I look at those as I listen to those too, because I look at those as an opportunity. This person is obviously engaging, in one way or the other, but is engaging because he's looking for information. The information that he has is wrong. So I listen to that information, and then it's up to us to re-engage and correct that. To see that, okay, this misinformation is out there. This is the information that I need to create and put it back out there and make sure that people know.
But do you think policies or projects can change because of the information that is gathered on social media?
They should, if there's enough contradicting information, definitely. And a lot of the best experts are out there. They're not necessarily sitting in the foreign ministries as much as many of us would like to think so. And I think this is a huge shift also that the social media have brought to us, that these discussions that earlier maybe happened in different rooms or places somewhere else are now there online. And definitely we have to listen and follow and see what's going on. And in a way, we try to initiate discussions, or we put a lot of questions, for example, out, and I wish there was more discussion. I was just being even a bit envious. I think Ambassador Halliday is not here anymore, but he said in his speech that every day the United States has to think that the whole world is watching us and following us, what we're doing. And well, that's not the case with Finland. In a way, there are not that many people who have so much opinions about what Finland is doing and so on, but we'd be happy to engage much more in a discussion if there was more of it.
So, of course, in an ideal world, you want to be able to be very reactive to what everybody is saying. And I think that's what we might say that we're doing and we want to do more of, but it's also a matter of resources and how much can you really follow and who do you trust, and some of that takes time to build, right? There's of the millions of people online, how do you know who the most authentic people are? How do you know who the most trustworthy are? Sometimes that's a journalist, and when you're trying to find subject matter experts on specific policy, it takes some time to kind of look through them and really guide or find the conversation that's most meaningful or that really is worthy of a policy shift. And I think, of course, in an ideal world, we want to say that we're doing that more often. But I think it'll just be a matter of time, and you have to kind of take maybe larger data samples versus kind of individual stuff. And we don't always have the time or the resources to really locate that or pinpoint that down to something really useful. But kind of on a smaller embassy level, of course, we're looking at what people are saying within the community and seeing how we can maybe shift our individual policies on the local level.
Are resources an issue for you?
Resources?
Resources, yes. Well, behind a tweet, there's a person. Behind a Facebook posting, there's a person. Behind a project, there is a person. So this is also a resource-driven initiative.
It's it's a little bit hard because for us, in our case, it's basically at the embassy, the person that puts that out, puts all that information out. It's me, and that's it. And I really. At this point, I don't recommend that for anyone. If it should definitely be an office on so on because of the fact that social media is here. I mean, it's a fact that every embassy should be on and should be engaging in that way. But it's becoming so big and so many different things to handle. As Jed was saying earlier, you definitely do need experts, from different areas to really feed you that. And it's very hard to sort of do that on your own.
Yeah, I think resources definitely an issue because, for example, for us, if we take up a new social media tool, we want to do that well. We don't want these dead or dormant social media sites. So if we decide to take one more, we have to have the resources to do that. For example, we've been very active on Twitter and Facebook, and I wanted to take Instagram on board, but I was quite hesitant on it because we're two people and also dealing a lot with other things than purely communications. But then happily, we got into the embassy one new person, a young person who was an Instagram fan, and she was so excited about it, and we were talking about it. So I just asked her that if we opened an embassy Instagram account, would you be interested in being responsible for it? And she was, so now we have an account there also.
Before we go to our question and answer session, I just wanted to ask you a final question. If we were sitting here a year from now, and I would ask you, where's engagement for you at your level, at your embassy? Where would you like it to be? What would you like to see going forward?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, and it's because social media, the use of it at our embassy is becoming so big and so important that where I would like it to be is I would like it to be sort of utilized or sort of an office really created because also that we have the mission at the United Nations is starting to tweet and everything like that. We just opened up a consulate in LA, and they're starting to tweet. So I think what we need to do, and what I hope to do, is to sort of create a central office. I mean, of course, every New York and LA are going to have to be talking about specific things in their area, and that's right. But I think the tone, everything needs to be consistent. The messaging and everything needs to be. So that's definitely where I would like it to be. I'm not sure it will get there in 1 year, but we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. Tana, where?
Well, I guess in 1 year things will happen again. Either our old tools have changed again, like Twitter is now changing a lot all the time, or then there's a totally new tool, and I hope that we'll always stay sort of open-minded and ready to take these new things on board. And what I also hope to do in 1 year is to get our diplomats in our embassy better involved in the tools we already have.
Yeah, definitely getting our diplomats more involved. And then I think we're a little bit behind the times of where some of the brands or organizations and some of the news outlets are, right? They're creating graphics or they're creating short videos to better communicate some of the content that's out there or some of their news stories. So in an ideal world, we'll have a full-time maybe graphic or multimedia editor that can really design things and simplify some of the messages that we're putting out. Certainly, as you read all the studies on what visuals do for content on Facebook and Twitter, and certainly you have Instagram and Pinterest and all these other accounts, is finding ways to kind of better use data visualization as the hot topic is today.
Thank you very much. So we'll take some. Oh, okay.
Government has been slow to take up new tech. How should it institutionalize adopting new processes?
I think we were discussing last night at dinner. It's pilot programs. I think it's a lot of it is you have to do kind of individual testing amongst some of the embassies or amongst the individual missions to really see what works and what doesn't work. And from there, it's right. As you're building it, and Sana said, is you got to kind of create the program from the start and understand who your target audience is and understand what you're trying to accomplish on the goal and setting measurements that you can reach. And then you got to look back at it and see, did it work? How did it work? What we can do better? And from there, it's on the individual mission basis. You can kind of hope to spread it to a few more missions and then maybe make it a more institutional thing from the foreign ministry or from the top. But I think it's hard to just strictly dictate from the top about what's going to work and what's not going to work. You have to understand who your audience is in the respective country, do small little tests, and then from there kind of continue to expand it.
Over there. Oh, yes.
My name is Diego Basante with the Embassy of Ecuador, and my question for the panelists is I'd like to know how they deal with the different audiences that embassies have. Generally speaking, I can think of at least three: your local communities in the United States or in DC, the American local public, but also your audiences back home. So I'm the social media guy for the Embassy of Ecuador, and I can tell you from my experience, occasionally I'll get comments and tweets from people that don't necessarily understand. They're not the only audiences that the embassy is reaching out to. So they'll say things like, well, you're the Embassy of Ecuador. Why are you tweeting in English? Right? So we have to explain to them that we really have to engage with local audiences as well. But the bigger point is that embassies do have different audiences, and that they don't always understand that they're not the only ones that embassies are reaching out to. So I'd like to know how they deal with these different constituencies.
Well, for example, we try to find a kind of mix of postings we do that would cater our main target groups. So we always, once a week or so, we go through the stuff we've been doing the previous week, and we see that did we have something for everybody. But for example, people back home, people in Finland, we don't do anything for them. We concentrate only on Americans here, and then Finnish Americans or Finns living here. And Finns only in the case mainly when there's a question of crisis communications, where we use our social media a lot in hurricanes and so on. Otherwise, we concentrate on American audiences here.
Haytham, do you want to add?
No, I was just going to say that's right. I was just going to say that there is different audiences for different reasons. For us, it's a little bit easier because we are engaged in a lot of different initiatives all over the United States. So we just sort of back those up and we target them, specifically. Like I was saying earlier, if it's like if they're going into a specific state for one reason or the other, we will target that specific area, that specific state, and highlight that. I get that too. I get a lot of people from the United Arab Emirates are like, why aren't you tweeting in Arabic? What is this? You're supposed to represent your country and everything like that. But I think quickly they do start to understand when they go ahead and read the rest of our postings and stuff like that they are not the audience. But that being said, as you said, that we do have a lot of people here in the United States that live here. Either they go to school here or what have you, and we have to stay connected to them. And in the past, just like you said earlier, when there were hurricanes and stuff like that, we were able to engage with them. And we do reach out to them. We sort of We have an email that goes out from the embassy, as I'm sure other embassies do, that goes directly to them, and we make sure to include in there, stay connected with us online via blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
We have a question there. Wow. You want to take that?
It goes to hiring the right people. I mean, right? It's I think the same thing that any brand or communicator would do is you're going to hire someone who kind of understands the issues and understands how to be them. Fortunately, you have when you're working with diplomats, you're going to hire someone that kind of has a similar mindset to you, but maybe a mindset that's more representative or that can be translated online. So you have to have someone who understands how their policy or understands how their country is being perceived in the respective mediums, and being able to translate that to engage with or to be active with that community. I think at some point in time you may have someone that kind of screws up, but that's part of it. You have to be willing to kind of make a little bit of leaps or make some tests and from there, then you only learn what will work and what doesn't work.
And I think it was you yesterday who said if something goes wrong, you can always blame the intern. So.
I think one question back.
Say your account is hacked. How do you measure the effectiveness of your social media campaigns? How do you know what's working and what's not? I mean, with Twitter, let's say you have 50 retweets, Facebook, 2,000 likes, Google Plus, one. But how do you translate those numbers into success? And when do you know that your campaign is working? Do you have any analytical tools that you use or,
Yeah, there's a lot of analytics out there, Google and on and on and on. Yeah, I mean, obviously you need to do that. I do that once a month, and then an overall for the end of the year. But I get those numbers, the likes and the retweets and all that stuff, basically just sort of because the hierarchy, is going to want to see that, right? So, okay, that's easy, right? But I don't really pay attention to that because I don't believe we're being a success because we have X amount of likes or anything. That's not really what I do look for. And even if I dive a little bit deeper and look at how many impressions there were or how many interactions there were, that's still not enough. I want to dive even deeper than that, and then look at every single posting, and then use tools that tell me how many interactions or how many impressions did I have on this post, from where and from who. Which can in itself be a huge challenge, you know what I mean? But I think that's really the only way, because just paying attention to sort of likes and all that stuff, it doesn't say anything really.
I'll add briefly, it's who you want to reach and who you want to engage with, and you're kind of setting those metrics or setting your goals in advance. For some things that may be that are strictly kind of cultural, it could be just general impressions. For some things that are maybe policy related, you're trying to reach the influencers and specific individuals, right? So our Twitter account, we've gone through it and looked at a lot of our followers and recognized that we have many reporters and many media outlets. And so for some of our content, those are the people that we're seeking to target, are kind of the influencers. And for some people, it's on the commercial or business side, and others it's on like cultural and kind of the general population. So it's kind of different for each and everything. It's hard to really specify for one individual campaign what the most impactful analytic is.
I think we have another question.
We have one last question from Twitter because we have to get right to the second panel. Facebook and Twitter are old news. What is the next big tool for digital diplomacy?
Ooh, good.
We
Oh, Facebook and Twitter are all news, and what is the next digital tool for diplomacy?
I think, well, I mean, it's sort of a hard question to
Yeah.
answer, but I think for us really is, I don't really believe that. I don't think that Twitter and Facebook are old news or anything like that. But I think the trend, and I think Jed was talking about this earlier, that the trend is that people want to see stuff. They want that your posts and whatever you have on needs to be very visual. And that's a sort of a trend that we're trying to take. We're also on Instagram as well, but obviously we post pictures and videos on there and everything, like very short ones. But our regular posts are on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. We're trying to be as visual as we can, because I think the attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So the quicker you can get your message out there, you know, the easier it'll be. And what better way to do that is with visuals. So I think that's where it's going.
Do you want to add the next big digital tool?
I definitely echo what Haitham was saying about the visual infographics. So on those, we don't know yet what is the tool. I don't think anybody knows. The first one to take up one, we'll be happy to follow immediately unless we are the first one. But I think also the old tools are changing all the time. So the bigger changes might be even there, or tools combining their or buying each other. So we don't know.
I think you've seen some embassies go to BuzzFeed. The British embassy was kind of the first to go on it last summer, and then you've seen a lot of other embassies kind of jump on that bandwagon as well, and it's been quite successful, I think, on a number of posts. But it's, again, kind of seeing where the people are, and the government may not kind of be leading the way on where the interactions are taking place, but hopefully quick to follow on kind of where those interactions and where those engagements are happening. And it goes back to resources, is you still want to kind of, you don't want to lose the populations that you've created, or the publics that you've created on Facebook and on Twitter or on Instagram, and trying to find a way to best balance kind of reaching these new audiences, or they could be the same audiences just on a different platform, while maintaining kind of the existing audiences that you've created.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation with all of you and all the audience, and we'll be right back with the second panel.
Thank you.